सहनौ भवतु सहनौ भुनक्तु सह वीर्यङ्करवावहै तेजस्विनावधीतमस्तु मा विद्विषावहै। ॐ शान्ति शान्ति शान्ति। We'll start with reading the preface, the book, The Holocaust of Attachment.
The Holocaust of Attachment. Preface. The fall of the human intellect has caused an explosion of the mind, leaving behind a holocaust of attachment that is now threatening extinction of the human race. Yet people around the world remain unaware of their attachment to virtually everything in life. Ironically, attachment appears in the garb of love and is accepted as a humane quality by the society at large. To suffer from a disease is bad enough, but to contract a disease and not be aware of it could prove fatal. So are people totally blind to this Holocaust? They dismissed attachment as prima facie absurd, a pessimistic view, and treat the threat with indifference as smokers treat tobacco for causing cancer. Even the intelligentsia around the world are lost in ignorance. Hence, your approach to the subject of attachment would need a true spirit of inquiry without the interference of preconceived, undigested notions. You need to start with a study of the human constitution vis-à-vis that of the animal and plant. The fundamental distinction lies in the provision of the intellect for humans alone. The intellect plays a vital role in the life of a human being. It needs to be developed and used in all transactions of life. A human bereft of his intellect in the world would share the fate of a rudderless boat in the vast ocean. You must realize that you are born in captivity, you live in captivity, and die in captivity. You are showered with do's and don'ts, maxims and mandates by your elders all through your childhood. Later in life, you are victimized by the community and country you live in. As a result of these external pressures, your mind caves in. Furthermore, the mind develops attachment and possessiveness towards practically everything it alights upon. You remain enslaved by them. Hence the need for a powerful intellect to rise above captivity and enjoy your fundamental liberty. There is a fundamental difference between love and attachment. Love is a divine quality in a human, but when it becomes self-centered, selfish, it turns sour. it takes the form of attachment. And attachment is deadly. There is hardly any love left in the modern world. Instead, selfish attachment and possessiveness has spread to person, family, and society. And the aftermath of attachment has been devastating. It has taken its toll on human beings. This pernicious trait of attachment operates in every facet of human life. It is a virus causing havoc to the human race. The antivirus for the entire range of attachments that humans suffer from lies in the intellect. A strong intellect alone can quell the virus. Interestingly, no other creature suffers from this virus. Only the human mind develops a variety of attachments for wealth, family, name, fame, and the most devastating of all, the attachment to one's religion. Any form of attachment causes the mind to be agitated and depressed. So the solution lies in maintaining objectivity and poise with the active use of the intellect. That is the stance of detachment. But human beings as a whole fail to appreciate this fine trait and reject it. Hence, they need to understand the role of detachment and adopt it in their lives. The present state of affairs in the world poses an emergency to program the rehabilitation of the atrophied intellect. The author has provided the necessary literature and founded the Vedanta Academy where students study and implement it. However, people are not even aware of the existence of the intellect, much less able to evaluate the status of their intellect. The existing scholars and luminaries possess the knowledge of the subjects, no more. They have hardly developed the intellect. They do not see the need to develop it. The state of the intellect and the deterioration of human beings calls for the services of the United Nations, universities, governments, and educational institutions to set up Vedanta academies round the world. Launch on a concerted effort to build the human intellect. Human beings need a powerful intellect to control and direct the unrestrained mind wreaking havoc on individuals, communities, and nations. The ultimate goal in life, however, is to discover the bliss of the self within. The intellect plays the vital role to cross over one's mundane involvement and gain the self, attain spiritual enlightenment. A. Parthasarathi.
Holocaust of attachment is because of the fall of the human intellect. So the problem is attachment. The cause of the problem is lack of intellect. The solution is to strengthen the intellect by study, knowledge, and understanding. This is the theme. The problem. First is the problem. Attachment is the problem. Okay. What has caused the problem? The lack of intellect has caused the problem. What does one do? You got to strengthen the intellect. And you got to strengthen the intellect through study, knowledge, and understanding. What is that knowledge, study, and understanding and all? We'll discuss. So first we will see what the problem is. Attachment is the problem. And you can define attachment in any number of ways. You can approach this attachment, and still something will be missing in that approach, because the very root of attachment is selfishness. Not only that, it doesn't appear as a disease, it appears as love. The difficulty in understanding the disease is it doesn't appear as a disease. It appears as the most wonderful thing, the most beautiful thing. The most destructive thing, attachment, appears to human beings as the most wonderful thing, as the most beautiful thing. What? The most wonderful, beautiful thing in life is love. He says, ironically, the disease of attachment appears as love. That is why nobody understands this attachment. For everybody has attachment, and all their attachments, individually, everybody misunderstands it as love. That is the disease that is threatening the human beings into extinction, he says. To suffer from a disease is bad enough, and to know and not to know that you have a disease is destructive, fatal. What is the disease? Attachment is the disease. And the person doesn't know that there is attachment. Here we are in a society where selfishness is promoted as a virtue. What do we talk? What are we talking about attachment here? It has swung to the other direction where selfishness is spoken about as a virtue. You got to be selfish. You got to be self-centered. You got to focus on yourself. Already the mind is focused on itself only. And education also says you got to focus on yourself. All that matters is what you feel. All that matters is what you like. You got to only follow what you feel. You got to follow only what you like. And continuously, selfishness is promoted as the right way of living. A person who has an intellect will wake up and ask this question. What is the question? All of us are trained and got PhDs in being selfish. And why all are still agitated? Why there is so much of agony, pain, misery, suffering, depression, fear? You name it, it is there. On the one side, we talk about selfishness as a meaningful. You don't have to tell a human being to be selfish. You don't have to train a human being to be selfish. Selfish, a human is already. Effort is to make a human being come out of it. Effort is always to make a human being come out of selfishness. And it is the intellect that can talk about, diagnose the disease, understand the cause of the disease, and then come up with the solution. It goes through stages. First stage is to diagnose the disease. Now we are slightly elaborating. Stage number 1 is to diagnose the disease. What is the disease? Fear, anxiety, depression is the disease. Everybody is crying. There is not one person who's not crying. The reasons for crying may differ, but at the end of the day, all are crying. Not tears of joy. It's tears of pain, agony, misery, sorrow. Not the tears of joy we are talking about. So, what is the disease? The disease is pain, misery, suffering. This is known. And all human efforts are to get rid of this disease. All human efforts are always to get rid of this disease. Now, the starting point of the diagnosis of the disease. Disease is what we experience already. So we don't need a lesson on what the disease is. All of us have this lesson on all of us have a lesson on what the disease is. Now starts the analysis of the disease. The analysis is it external or is it internal? The cause of it, is it external or is it internal? Obviously, sir, it is external. Where is the problem? Obviously, where is the problem? There's no difficulty at all because the cause is external. Since the cause is external, rearrange the external. Change the external, rearrange the external, modify the external, problem is sorted out. Therefore, so much of human effort is geared towards changing, modifying, bettering the external. No doubt the external is changed. No doubt the external is modified to an extent where I'm reading heat wave only in newspapers. Heat wave is read only in newspapers. In reality, there is no heat wave. In reality, there is no heat wave at all. Why there is no heat wave at all in reality? You sleep in the air-conditioned room, you wake up in that air-conditioned room, you get into the air-conditioned car, wherever you go, it is air-conditioned. Only thing that is lacking is to get a clothing that is air-conditioned, where we need, so everything will be, once you go into that, wherever you walk around, it will be air-conditioned. The problem is external. Heat is a problem. Find air condition as a solution to the problem. We should be happy because problem is sorted out, no? So the problem is external and solutions are found to sort it out. Intellect comes and asks this question. If external is the problem, if you sort it out, what should be your mental state? The disease, you should be free of the disease, no? That's the logic. You should be free of the disease. So how much ever the external has changed, or in fact, more and more the external become better and better. When I say better means comfort, comfort for one species. No, there's no betterment there. It is destroying only. More and more and more it is becoming comfortable, that too for one particular species. At least that species should be mentally happy. But then what do you find? The disease is not, the intensity of the disease in no way seems to decrease, and it only seems to go on increasing. Then we say, no, no, sir, it's not the objects and all, it is the persons. Change the human being. First is external objects. Better than nothing changed. Now I have understood. Problem is not that object, sir. That person is the problem. And whoever that person is, isn't it? That person could be the spouse, that person could be the parents, that person could be the teacher, that person could be anybody. Second fantastic solution. What? Change that person. Where is the problem? And they go on making law after law after law that you can change. They are not saying change or don't change. Change or don't change doesn't make any difference at all. Why? At the end of the day, the disease remains the same. So we analyze what? The disease is internal and it is not caused by anything external. Huge leap in understanding. Vedanta becomes meaningful only from this point onwards. Till that time, Vedanta will not be meaningful at all. You can hear it for decades, you can hear it for Janmas also. Vedanta will not be meaningful. Why? Because the belief still is what? The cause for the problem is external. Impossible to convince oneself that the problem is internal. If the problem is internal, it means what? Any environment, any person is okay. Correct? If we say the problem is internal, if we say the problem is internal, then what does it mean? Any situation, any problem is okay. Sorry, any situation, any person is okay. For they don't cause the problem. No, sir, internal cause only, but still external also matters. It means what? The disease, the cause of the disease is not properly diagnosed. The diagnosis is the starting point of unknowledge. What is the diagnosis? The diagnosis, it is not external, it is internal. The moment you realize that it is internal, Vedanta starts becoming very meaningful after that. The pursuit of study, knowledge and understanding becomes meaningful only when the diagnosis is very clear. And once you understand it as internal, you are so helpless. You don't know what to do. Once you understand it as internal, you don't know what to do, because you don't know how to go inside and you don't know how to locate it inside. You don't know what to do. A helplessness comes. At that helplessness, people feel, oh my God, after coming into Vedanta and all, problem seems to be more only. At least previously, I was very convinced that problem is external. One day, all problems will be solved once the external is changed. At least on the conviction of the, at least we had some hope. With that hope only, we go to school, we go to university, we take up a job, we get married, we get produce children, retirement plan, next Janma plan also we do. Why? Yeah. If we plan for this Janma, we start planning for next janma also. So because you only plan, we don't do anything. Huh? Yeah, planning only happens. Nothing happens after the beyond the planning. It's exactly like the child reading the timetable to study. No, every child will do that. No, they will put a timetable. And you look at the timetable, at the end of that day, the child would have finished the course itself, the child would have finished. But then at the end of the day, what would have happened? Not even one lesson would be covered. We also did that, no, once. Yeah. We also did that, no, plan after plan after plan. Last night only tension starts. Why? Because nothing is. Then we go to the examination hall, and then we finish the exams also, and then we come out, and suddenly, that's why one thing you should not do is after the examination discuss, no? After the examination, they will start discussing the answers. And then suddenly one fellow will say, hey, on the fourth page, that question, did you answer? Then only you will realize that there is the fourth page in the question paper only. Because you didn't go beyond the second page itself. Where is the fourth page now? And what is that question in the fourth page? Planning and planning and planning, isn't it? When you are young, you plan for old. When you are old, you plan for next. Actually, what is that? Because the diagnosis is not done properly, and where the solution also is not attended to properly. So what happens? You diagnose the problem as internal, immediately a helplessness comes. You really don't know where to go, what to start. You really don't know where to go, what to start. To that helpless person, knowledge speaks. In that helplessness, Vedantic knowledge comes and speaks and makes you strong. One institution is Vedanta Academy. Ram Subramanian. Don't assess the institution looking at me. Yeah? We are all one of the useless products of the institution. They are all wonderful products that has come out of that institution. Yeah. Don't judge that place. Huh? And then he says, institution like this is required all over. Institutions like this is required all over. Why? Because one institution has only 100 rooms. 100 rooms can cater only to 200 people. Now, what is 8 billion versus 200 people having an intellect? That 200 will be all right. But what about the rest? Yeah. What about the rest? Nothing. Therefore, what is the solution? This knowledge and understanding. And this knowledge and understanding will speak to you only when you recognize the helplessness. And what is the helplessness? The problem is internal. When you go internal, you know only two things. That's why you become helpless. Now we are elaborating the helplessness. When we say go internal, you know only two things. What are the two things that you know? Either you know your body or you know your mind. You do not know the third entity at all. If we say look at yourself, you know only two things to look at you. What are the two things that you know to look at you? You know your body. At least that much we know, no? Vijay. Yeah, at least body irukudhu appada. I know that there is a body. Maybe diseased, maybe not so good, maybe not so this, but still so I know there is a body. Then the next one, what? The mind. That's it. We do not know the third entity. That third entity that has to guide the mind and the senses, the body. The third entity that got to guide the body and the mind. Body means senses. Mind means emotions, whatever we are going to discuss now, whatever we are going to see in this book. He's only talking about the preface, no? Preface ni gotirlam niga, isn't it? We'll do the time pass with preface only for today. With that helplessness, you don't get depressed, because when knowledge diagnoses the disease as internal, it also tells you what is the solution. What is the solution? The solution is in the intellect. Every human being, all human beings has an intellect as the potential. Please understand, intellect is a potential. Potential means more you exercise it, more it becomes strong. That's what potential means. Just as all are born with a potential for muscle. Nobody is born with muscle, no. All human beings has potential to grow muscle. So are you born with muscle, or are you born with potential for muscle? You are born with the potential for muscle. Similarly, intellect is a potential. You got to rightly make use of it. Vedanta is the exclusive subject. Vedanta is the only subject that specifically talks about this intellect. That's why he says this has to be taught to everybody all over this planet. Why? Because just as each and every science talks about a particular, each and every science has a specific focal point. What is a specific focal point of Vedanta? The focal point, intellect. Intellect. So he says the fall of the intellect has caused an explosion of the mind, leaving behind a holocaust of attachment. So the diagnosis, what? Disease. The cause, is it external or internal? If you say internal, immediately you recognize you are free. If you say it is external, there is no freedom at all. Are you able to follow? Again, I repeat. If you say the disease is internal, you are free. Why? Because you can do something and get out of the disease. If you say the disease is external, you are always bound by the external. That's what he means by captivity. If you mean the disease, if you say it is external, you can never be free. Why? Because the external always appears to be the bondage. Therefore, Vedanta starts by saying, no, it is internal. It means you have the freedom. Freedom from what? Freedom from the disease. And whenever we talk about freedom from the disease and how wonderful and how beautiful it is to be free of disease, immediately everybody wants it. But when we talk about how beautiful it is, how wonderful it is to be free of the disease, immediately mind develops a attachment and greed to that state also. It will develop an attachment and greed to that state also and asks what? How to get there quickly. How to get there immediately. Quickly, immediately, Lamkoda is not the right word, sir. How to get it now, this moment. Because mind always wants everything this moment, no. It cannot say, okay, next. It cannot say. It has to say now, isn't it? That's the mind. When Swati was small, she will come and ask me. Something she will ask. And I will always say tomorrow. I used to say tomorrow. And next morning, religiously, she'll wake up and ask. And I'll give the same answer. What? Tomorrow. After a few days, she found out. And then she started saying, what? No tomorrow and all. Whatever I want it today, now, immediately. Anything that I want today, I want now, I want it immediately. Because that is the mind. That is the... So, when we talk about the beautiful state of freedom from the disease, mind will immediately want that state. Intellect comes and says, you got to exercise. You got to exercise, relax and wait. Exercise, relax and wait for the muscles to grow. Mind in that state of disturbance cannot relax, cannot wait. Because it will say, relaxation will come only after I get it. Adu vandadhan relaxation. This disturbed state is the mind. And intellect is that which understands the mind and guides the mind accordingly. Intellect is that which understands the mind and guides accordingly. And when it guides through knowledge. Intellect is that which can become strong only through knowledge and understanding. That's why they say knowledge is power. Knowledge is power, because intellect can become strong only through knowledge and understanding. And for knowledge and understanding to happen, the Vedantic knowledge goes about this systematically. The Vedantic knowledge goes about it systematically, it goes. What is the systematic way of going through? First, it starts from the world. The analysis starts from the world. It's called Vyashti Vichara. It starts from the inquiry of the world, because it's easy to start there. So it starts from the analysis of the world. That's why even in this book, all books has this sequence. All Vedantic text has this sequence. What is the sequence? It will start with the analysis of the world first. From the analysis of the world, then it comes to the individual. First, it starts with understanding the world. Then it starts with the individual. What is the world? Objects and beings, Nama Rupa, goes through these changes, etc. Whatever be the analysis about the world. Then comes the individual. Then comes analysis. What is the analysis? The analysis of the individual. So the world is analyzed first. The individual is analyzed second. Then the connection between the individual and the world. They are not separate things. What is the connection between the individual and the world? The third. And then the fourth. What is the fourth? The state of mind of the individual. The state of mind of the individual. Having analyzed it, diagnosed it, talks about it. What is the way to get out of it? Technically, what we call as sadhana chatushtayam, etc. This is the way to get out of sadhana chatushtayam, shravana, manana, nididhyasana, etc. And then what will be the benefit? If you do all this, what is the benefit? That also has to be told, no? That also has to be told. And what is the benefit? That's how the preface concluded. What is the benefit? You will realize your oneness with the self. Where do you start? Start with analysis of the world and you go through it step by step by step, and then the jnana phalam. Technically, it's called jnana phalam. Jnana phalam means the benefit of this knowledge. If you want to make a person pursue something, you got to tell that person the benefit, no? For without knowing the benefit, nobody will do anything. In the Vidura Nidhi, Vidura tells Dhritarashtra, quoting from the Vedic mantra, he says, even the fool will not take up an activity without knowing the result. He says, even a fool will not take up anything without knowing the result. It means the result also has to be told. This is the result you will get. And then it guarantees the result provided you follow the sequence. It talks about the result and then it will guarantee the result provided you follow the method. So what is the preface here now? It talks about the sequence. So first it speaks about the world, the individual mechanism, and in the individual mechanism, the three things: the body, the mind, the intellect. The intellect needs to be developed, and then it moves on with the individual. Straight away we go into the individual. What is the individual? Right from birth, there seems to be a right from birth, there is the thirst for freedom. At the same time, there is no freedom at all. Two paradoxical things. Right from birth, that is captivity. Right from birth, there is the thirst for freedom. On the one hand, there is the thirst for freedom. On the other hand, there seems to be no freedom at all. When you are young, you are so convinced that freedom is possible. As you get older and older and older, what do you realize? All this, I also heard once about this freedom and all that. Now, it is very clear what? There is no such thing called freedom at all. There is no such thing called freedom at all, isn't it? That is captivity. And in this captivity, the most fundamental problem, the disease, is attachment. The nature of the mind is to get attached. Whatever it does, whatever it comes in contact with, mind will get attached. Anything it comes in contact, it will get attached. That's why he always says, you go to God, it will get attached to God. You go to an ashram, it will get attached to an ashram. You meet a guru, it will get attached to the guru. But mind as such doesn't seem to have freedom at all from this attachment. It will move from one object of attachment to another object of attachment. From attachment from one person, it seems to move on to another person. And what is attachment? Attachment comes from the very base selfishness. Attachment comes from the very base selfishness. And that selfishness and self-centeredness turns a potential divine into a potential Rakshasa. Rakshasa means one who is clear that selfishness is the right way. That is Rakshasa. What is divine? Unselfishness, love is the right way. Who is a human being? Confused between the two. Who is a human being? Confused between the two is a human. Rakshasa is very clear. That's why we have grades of Rakshasa also, no? Just as we have grades of divine, we have grades of Rakshasa also. Isn't it? Who is Rakshasa? Rakshasa is clearly convinced. What? Selfish. Because selfish is virtuous. Unselfish, unselfishness, sacrifice, service, based in the world will stamp on you and it will go. You will be left behind. Nothing will be there. So you got to fight for you got to fight. What you got to fight? You got to fight. What you got to fight for? Selfishness. Yeah. We don't call it as selfishness. We call it as rights. Fight for your rights. It's a right. It's my right. It's my right. Okay. If only one person calls it as a right and others are letting go, it is all right. If everybody is fighting for the right, what will happen? The father says, this is my right. The mother says, this is my right. The child says, this is my right. What will happen in that family? We will not feel like walking into that house, no? We will not feel like walking into that house. Why? Because as near the gate only, you can feel the vibrations. You can feel the vibrations. As you go near only, you can feel. They do not call it as selfishness. They started calling it as, these are my right. This is my right. This is my right. And if you don't fight for your rights, what will happen? Others will run over you. Have you ever observed? We always, even language wise also, we say, Pavamba, or Romba Nallavaru, we say, no? Correct? We never say, wow, he's a virtuous man. We don't say that. We say, we sympathize with the virtuous man, no? A good man means he can be easily cheated. A good person means he can easily be taken for a ride. A good person means useless person. Correct. Therefore, goodness is always equated to uselessness. Yeah. What do we do with this society? And nobody wants to be in that condition. Therefore, what is the other way out? Turn selfish and self-centered. This attachment has taken its toll on human beings. It's a virus causing havoc. Yeah. Antivirus. Intellect is the antivirus. Now comes a very unique analysis. What is a very unique analysis? This disease is only to a human being. Anything that comes in contact with human beings develop this disease. Poor things. Other species, when they are left to themselves, they don't get attached at all. The moment they come in contact with the human being, we spread the virus to them also, isn't it? No other creature suffers from attachment. All species has love. All species has affection. All species takes care. But one thing they don't do is what? Not get attached. And we do not know what to do if we don't get attached. If we don't get attached, we will not know what to do. Only way we know how to do things is to get attached. The mother bird takes care of the little bird and it grows. It develops the wings and flies. And when it flies out, It just flies out. Isn't it? It will not come back to say thank you also to the mother. And the mother also doesn't sit and cry. Ungrateful children. At least they could have told thank you, no? At least on Mother's Day, they would have wished, no? I love you, mom. They would have told at least that, no? Sir, what I am asking from my children, sir? Nothing. And if anybody says nothing, means they are asking for something which the child cannot give. At least better to know what you are asking and at least be clear. I don't want anything from the children, sir. It means what? They want maximum from that. What is the maximum? What is the maximum? What is the maximum? I love you, no? I took care of you, no? I did this for you, no? I did this for you, no? The child turns back and says, now what should I do? Be my slave forever. Slavery is what you demand in return for the love. This is called selfishness. Are you able to follow? What you demand in return for the love, slavery. The other person says, Swamiji says like this, sir. To heaven with your love, he will say. The child will say. Yes, to heaven with your love. Who wants it? Why? Because slavery is not acceptable. Why? Freedom is your original nature. Since freedom being your original nature, slavery in any form is not acceptable. The problem is not about love. The problem is slavery in the name of love. That's slavery. But human beings as a whole fail to appreciate it. And what is this? Beautifully he says it. The proof of development of intellect is what? Very beautifully he says it. And right through, that is the purpose of knowledge itself. What is the proof that your intellect is growing, developing? Detachment is the proof. Detachment is the proof that your intellect is gaining strength. Human beings as a whole fail to appreciate this fine trait of detachment and they reject it. Why? Just as attachment is misunderstood as love, detachment is misunderstood as indifference. Again, just as attachment is misunderstood as love, detachment is misunderstood as indifference. Therefore, the role of detachment and how to adopt it in lives is freedom from the Holocaust. What is freedom from the Holocaust? Understanding detachment, and detachment becomes your lifestyle. When detachment becomes your lifestyle, you have a powerful intellect. Today, we are looking at a problem at a very, very elementary level. We are not looking at the problem from the level of detachment and all now. We are at a situation where there is a thing called intellect has to be taught. Imagine it's like telling a human being, you have two eyes. You have two eyes. You have two eyes. Imagine that state where we have to teach a human being that we have two eyes. What level of deterioration it is. And what is this Vedic Vedantic culture? The Vedic Vedantic culture starts with saying that you have an intellect and that intellect has to be made strong. That is the first prayer that will be taught to the child. The Vedic culture, the Vedantic culture teaches a prayer to the child. At the age of 6 and 7, the prayer will be taught. Before that, you need not teach any prayer. அதுக்கு முன்னாடியே சாஸ்திரநாமா கிளாஸ் போகணும். அதுக்கு முன்னாடியே பகவத்கீதா மெமரைசிங் should happen. Intellectலாம் வராது. The first till you need not worry about teaching Bhagavad Gita's memorizing Bhagavad Gita shloka at the age of 5 and forgetting at the age of 12. What is the point? Isn't it? Memorize Sahasranama at 4 and not even remember one name at the age of 25. What is the point? What is the prayer in this Vedic Vedantic culture? The first prayer. The first prayer that is taught to all human beings, irrespective of the caste, irrespective of the four varnas, irrespective of who they are, what they are, man, women. One prayer that was taught in common to all humanity. And that prayer is called Gayatri Mantra. And that prayer is called Gayatri Mantra. Without any distinction, man, woman, caste, creed, whatever you are, this will be taught first. And what is Gayatri? We have seen this. What does Gayatri Mantra talks about? Dhiyo yonah prachodayat. Tatsaviturvarenyam bhargo devasya dhimahi dhiyo yonah prachodayat. Tatsaviturvarenyam bhargo devasya dhimahi dhiyo yonah prachodayat. Okay, forget about Tatsaviturvarenyam also because it is glorifying the sun. Glorifying the sun is glorifying knowledge. Dhiyo yonah prachodayat. Dhi means buddhi. Dhi means buddhi. Buddhi means the intellect. Let my intellect be as sharp and as penetrative as the rays of the sun. That's the prayer. It means what? At the age of 6, 7, this prayer is taught. And you are supposed to say it 108 times in the morning, 54 times in the afternoon, 108 times in the evening again. It means what? என்ன calculation வந்துச்சு? 216 plus 54 எவ்வளோ? யாருக்காவது mathematics தெரியுமா? I don't know mathematics. Minimum that many times you have to remind yourself that you got to strengthen your intellect. Every day. அதெல்லாம் if you forgotten, at least on a particular day, you are supposed to remind yourself 1,000 times. Subramaniam. Correct? 1,000 times you are supposed to remember. 1,000 times if you remember, at least next day you will wake up with one thought, no? That is the prayer. Not intelligence, intellect. Not intelligence, the intellect. And why it should be like the sun's rays? The most penetrative, the most wonderful thing is the sun's ray. Why? Atma Bodha. Remember that. Two things. What are the two things? Number one, it is self-revealing. Intellect means two things. Knowledge and understandings. Strengthens intellect means two things. What are the two things? The first one. What is the first one? It is self-revealing. What is the example for self-revealing? By what light the sunlight is seen? Even to what a clarity that person should have had to ask this question. Yajnavalkya asked this to Maitreyi. By what light the sunlight is seen, O Maitreyi? Kolathur, Shankar. By what light the sunlight is seen? Sunlight itself. By that light, by sunlight. For you don't need any other light to do like that. Number one, it is self-revealing. Not only it is self-revealing, it clears everything around you. So it reveals everything around you also very clearly. The sunlight not only reveals it reveals itself, it reveals very clearly each and every object around you. A person who has been remembering the power of the intellect, who has been asking for the strength of the intellect, will go and ask, as the person asked in Mundaka Upanishad, that question. What is the question in Mundaka Upanishad? What is that one knowledge by which I know everything? What is that sunlight? What is that sunlight in reality? I know that I know everything. We are in need of that situation now. What? To talk about, there is this thing called intellect. And how many ever times we hear about this intellect? 30, 40 years people have been listening here. Still they have a doubt. That intellect na, Prasad. Intellect na, adu. Still adu mystery. Brahman kuda mystical. Brahman also we have understood. Brahman is also very clear and understand. But this intellect is not. What is the intellect? Intellect. What is this intellect? The intellect has two purposes. First, to seek and gain knowledge. Number two, monitor and direct the senses and the mind. Two purposes to intellect. First one is to seek and gain knowledge. Second is monitor and guide the senses and the mind. When we say monitor, it has to monitor the senses and mind. What is implied in that? By themselves, they cannot discipline themselves. They cannot monitor it by themselves. It's implied there. Are you able to follow? If senses can discipline itself, if mind can monitor itself, why do you need a third entity? We can only say intellect means to seek and gain knowledge. No. This mind, the senses and the mind needs to be monitored, governed, directed. Therefore, intellect serves these two purposes. Knowledge is of two types. One type of knowledge, we call it as worldly knowledge. Another kind of knowledge, we call it as knowledge of yourself. Again, the knowledge is of two. One type of knowledge is worldly knowledge. Another type of knowledge is the knowledge of yourself. Okay. What is worldly knowledge? What is the product? What is the result of worldly knowledge? Knowledge now result we said already. Correct? Remember that? Knowledge means there should be a result. There will be a result to that worldly knowledge. Okay. What is the result of worldly knowledge? The result of worldly knowledge is intelligent, illiterate, agitated, depressed human being. Again, Prasad, we can say this, no? Intelligent, சும்மா போட்டுக்கோங்க IIAD போட்டுங்க. What is worldly knowledge? I square AD கூட வச்சுக்கலாம். ராம் சுப்ரமணியம். I, intelligent, degree, masters, PhD, postdoctoral, intelligent, very intelligent. Result. What is the result of worldly knowledge? Kolathur. The result of worldly knowledge. Nalla board le perissa southla edu vechukonga. Yeah. Write it on the wall. Wall la vana, refrigerator you can put a stick. We'll post it. Shailesh, do that. Into worldly knowledge. Result. Intelligent. Wow. We are very happy to hear this. Intelligent. Comma, abdi kuda illa. Intelligent. Illiterate. Intelligent, illiterate. Agitated, depressed. This is the phala. This is the result of worldly knowledge. This in one word he calls it as intelligence. This in one word, Swamiji uses the word intelligence. Distinct and different from this knowledge is knowledge about yourself. And what is knowledge about yourself means Vedanta. And what is Vedantic knowledge? What is the laws of life? What is the reality about life? You can seek and gain that knowledge also. Vedanta is the knowledge of yourself. What is this knowledge of yourself means? And that's what he says as world needs. All over the world, Vedanta academies have to come. Or academy, so difficult. Where is all the academies? Yeah. At least Madras or academy we need, no? Venkat. Institute தான் இருக்குது, அகாடமி இல்லை. இங்கே அட்லீஸ்ட் எங்கேயாவது ஒரு அகாடமி வைக்கணும். பிரசாத் பார்த்து பண்ணுங்க இல்லையா, ஒரு அகாடமி. He is saying that, no, I am not saying. He is saying put one academy. And why? Intelligent, illiterate, agitated, depressed human being is the phala, is the result of worldly knowledge. Distinct and different from this knowledge is Vedanta, knowledge about yourself. What is that knowledge? That knowledge talks about the laws of life. The law, L-A-W, the law of life. Or in plural, you can call it as the laws of life. Or you can call it as the laws and realities of life. What is the law talks about? What does Vedanta talks about? Again, Naale Vishinda. What does the law talks about? Only 4 things. What are the 4 things? Number 1, essentials and non-essentials. In every aspect, there is an essential. And what is the essential and what is the non-essential? Number 1. Number 2, means and end. Means in plural, end in singular. The means and end. The third one, karyam, akaryam. What ought to be done, what ought not to be done. Idella or clarity vanda comes the ultimate. What is that? What is nitya, what is anitya? What is nitya, what is anitya? Aided and strengthened by this Vedantic knowledge, the intellect would be able to guide the perceptions, actions, and mind. When the intellect is guiding the perceptions, actions, and mind, then the humanity, then the individual, the society, the community, the country is free from this disease of attachment. And this intellect can be strengthened only by the knowledge of Vedanta. And we discussed what is Vedanta already. What is Vedanta? Essential, non-essential, means and end, karyam, akaryam, nityam, anityam. This is what Vedanta is. Strengthened by this, what happens? It seeks and gains this knowledge. Intellect alone can do that. in order to seek knowledge and in order to gain knowledge, a requirement. What is the requirement? Agitation of being ignorant. In order to seek and gain knowledge, a requirement. What is the requirement? An agitation of being ignorant. What are you losing by remaining in ignorance? What is the consequences of remaining in ignorance? This will help you to seek and gain knowledge. When we say knowledge means, obviously we don't have to repeat. Knowledge here means Vedantic knowledge. Again, seek and gain knowledge implies ignorance. When we say seek knowledge, gain knowledge, it means what? As you are today, you are ignorant. That is implied. And in order to gain knowledge, to seek knowledge, you got to understand what is it that you are losing by remaining in ignorance. What is the consequences of ignorance? The consequences of ignorance is depression, moha, depression, worry, anxiety, stress, strain. Any word you can use, doesn't matter. Or you can put all the words together, still ignorance is not clearly understood. The consequences of ignorance. Arjuna Vishada. Bhagavad Gita talks about it like that. Vishadam. Arjuna, despondency, depression. Only worldly knowledge will help you to modify the external. Worldly knowledge, intelligence will help you to modify the external, rearrange the external, reorder the external, change the external from one form to another form. Intelligence will help you to do that. Correct? It will find carbon in one form. It will know how to turn it into a fuel, and they will call it as fossil fuel. Oh, அது கூட குறைஞ்சினே இருக்குது. சன்னு தான் குறையாம இருக்குது. Therefore, go to sun now. Because that doesn't get, at least this is getting. So, what is worldly intelligence? Worldly intelligence is always about rearranging, modifying, changing the external. In the diagnosis, we have already done this diagnosis. What is the diagnosis? Rearranging the external, modifying the external, doing something externally is not going to help us in any way in overcoming the disease. It is good for a different purpose, but not for this purpose of overcoming the disease. Aided and strengthened by Vedanta, intellect guides. And this Vedantic knowledge is the sunlight. Therefore, the prayer, Gayatri. Therefore, the prayer, the Gayatri. What? The intellect should be in constant touch with Vedantic knowledge. That's the daily study. Everyday study. Daily study, because it has to be in touch with the knowledge. Okay, if the intellect is not in touch with that knowledge, then what it will be in touch with? Mind. That's what he says in the poem Pond. We'll be reading that also. The poem Pond, where the intellect is held captive by the mind. Why the intellect is held captive by the mind? Because the intellect is not exposed to the sunlight. Expose the intellect to the sunlight and ensure that the intellect is in constant touch with the sunlight. Sunlight here refers to knowledge. Yeah. Those who don't say, will my intellect grow if I stand in the sunlight for 30 minutes in a day, sir? Vitamin D deficiency, that also at the right time you should go. You may get skin cancer. Sir, Vedanta intellect varun bona, I ended up having a skin cancer and don't say. What it means by the intellect, what is meant by the sunlight is constant exposure to the regular exposure. Regular exposure means daily exposure. Up the intellect will get strengthened. You will be free from the disease. This is the preface. This is the preface. From next week, we will start discussing the text. We will go into the chapters next week. We'll start with the first chapter, the human mechanism. In that human mechanism, we will discuss the what he is doing in this text is straight away it comes to the human mechanism. In the Vedanta treatise, it will come from sequentially. It will come world, individual. Here, straight away it comes from. It starts with the human mechanism. So next week we'll start with this lesson, the human mechanism. With this, we conclude for today.